Today, we're going to dive into one of the biggest movements in American history, but we're not going to do it from some dusty textbook. Nope. We're going to see it all through the eyes of a young girl who lived it. Her name was Ivy, and her journal is going to be our guide. So, between about 1916 and 1970, something absolutely massive happened in the United States. It's called the Great Migration. We're talking millions of Black families moving from the rural South up to cities in the North and West. And this wasn't just, a small trend. It was one of the largest, fastest movements of people in American history. It literally changed the face of the country forever. For most of the 6 million people who made this incredible journey, their personal stories, their hopes, their fears, what it felt like, were just never written down. They're mostly lost to history. But today, we get a rare glimpse. We get to see this huge historical shift through the eyes of one young girl, all because she kept a journal. And this is her. This is Ivy. These words, written when she was just a kid in Mississippi, they just cut right to the heart of everything. It shows you why her family and millions of others would risk it all. It wasn't just about money or jobs. It was about this deep, powerful hunger for freedom.
So, what could possibly make a family decide to leave the only home they've ever known? Well, to really get their journey, we have to start with the powerful forces that were pushing them out.
Ivy's family were sharecroppers. Now, what that means is they farmed land that was owned by somebody else. In their case, a man named Mr. Greenfield. And their whole life, everything they worked for, all year long, came down to one single crucial moment: the cotton harvest. The stakes just could not be higher. And then this happened. A tiny little insect called the boll weevil. These things would just swarm the cotton fields and destroy the plants from the inside out. All of a sudden, a natural disaster becomes a complete economic catastrophe. For Ivy's family, these bugs weren't just an annoyance, they were a direct threat to their survival. And this right here, this is the moment everything changed. The crop is ruined, the debt they owe to Mr. Greenfield, there's no way to pay it. And in just one silent look between her parents, Ivy sees it all. Their life in Mississippi just wasn't possible anymore. So, with their whole world in Mississippi falling apart, a new idea starts to take hold. A powerful pull from thousands of miles away. A place that sounded like it offered everything they didn't have: California. Okay, so let's break down what made California sound like this promised land. First, and this is a huge one, no Jim Crow laws. None of that rigid segregation that controlled every single part of their lives back south. Second, the promise of jobs. Real, good-paying factory jobs, not back-breaking sharecropping. This was all happening because of World War II, and a presidential order had actually banned racial discrimination in the defense industry. It meant that for the first time, people like Ivy's dad could apply for any job. Ivy's journal just sums it up perfectly. You really see the two sides of the dream here. Her dad was focused on the economic opportunity, a better life, better pay, but her mom saw something just as important: freedom. And it was that combination, those two powerful dreams together, that made them decide to take the leap. All right, so the decision was made, but between the collapsing world of Mississippi and the promise of California, well, there was a vast, uncertain, and really tough journey ahead. Just look at how fast this all happened. On October 10th, they decide to go. Just 11 days later, they've sold most of what they own and are getting on a train. And by October 25th, they're in a completely different world. This timeline just shows you the incredible speed and, the finality of that choice. But here's the thing. Even as they were traveling toward freedom, the rules of the old world were right there with them. They were forced to ride in what was called a Jim Crow car. It was a separate, unequal train car just for Black passengers. They couldn't even go to the dining car to get food. Ivy writes that her mom had to pack all of their food in paper bags for the whole trip. And just try to wrap your head around the scale of this trip. Over 2,000 miles. They were trading everything they knew: the fields, the sounds, the smells of rural Mississippi, for the giant, sprawling, unknown city of Los Angeles. For a little girl like Ivy, this must have felt like a journey to another planet. So, after days on that train, they finally arrive. They're in Los Angeles. But now the big question is, would the reality of this place live up to the dream? For Ivy, the change was immediate, and it was huge, especially at school. Look at this. In Mississippi, a segregated school. In California, Her classroom was integrated. Black kids and white kids sitting right next to each other. Instead of sharing old, beat-up textbooks, she got her very own. And instead of walking for miles to get to school, she rode a school bus. These were real, everyday reminders that her entire world had changed. But, and this is a big but, getting away from Jim Crow laws didn't mean they got away from prejudice. The family was about to find out that the California dream was a lot more complicated than they'd imagined. This is what Ivy's mother told her after a new neighbor, a white woman, gave them a nasty look, and her son actually spat on the ground near them. It's such a heartbreaking but also powerful dose of reality. Her mom's words are basically saying, look, we've left one set of problems behind, but prejudice is still here, and we have to be strong enough to face it. But even with those tough moments, the signs of progress were everywhere, and they were undeniable. Her parents were making way more money working at an airplane factory than they ever could have dreamed of as sharecroppers. They got a bigger apartment. Ivy got to visit a public library for the very first time in her life, something she was forbidden from doing in Mississippi. And the family even bought their first radio. These weren't just things. They were symbols of a new, more stable, and more hopeful life. So, after the push out of Mississippi, the pull of California, that long journey, and this complicated new reality, what did it all add to? Had they actually found a new home? This table really lays out the trade-offs they made, doesn't it? The constant worry about debt and boll weevils was replaced by a new anxiety about unpredictable neighbors. The crushing weight of Jim Crow laws was exchanged for the freedom of integrated libraries. They left a community where they knew everyone, for the chance to build a new one. But the most important change is right there at the bottom. Their future was no longer capped by sharecropping. Now it was hopeful, and it was changing. And this right here is Ivy's final verdict. She's honest about it. She says it's hard not knowing what to expect. Sometimes people are nice, sometimes they aren't. It's not perfect. But she says this is our home now, and in that moment she couldn't think of anywhere else she'd rather be. And that's why her story is so important. Ivy's journey, her family's choice to leave, to travel across the country, to build a new life from scratch, that was a story that was repeated 6 million times over. Each one of those personal stories, like hers, was like a single thread in a giant tapestry that completely rewove the social and cultural fabric of America. It really leaves us with this one last big question to think about. For Ivy, it seems like home wasn't a place she arrived at the moment she stepped off the train. It was a feeling that grew, even with all the imperfections. And it makes you wonder, for anyone who makes a great journey, what is that moment? When does a strange new place finally start to feel like home?